So we'll talk today about various scanner devices. Does everybody here have a scanner device? A device that's always right now is the EX735. There are a number of devices, and I'm going to talk mainly about the use of those devices that also have cosmonic. So there are 3 devices. This is a professional device. It's called the VX735AG. And the AG refers to the electrodes that are made of silver. The silver is special. As I understand, I know nothing about metals, but I believe that the silver has a crystalline structure. And it feels different. If you take any silver against the skin, particularly in the face, or you take those electrodes, there is a different feel to it. There's a kind of softness to it. Can't explain that. There are also electrodes of gold. They are about as expensive as the device itself. You're talking $6,000 just for the electrodes. And they seem to bring across the signal much better. I felt it, but I'm not to jump to conclusions quickly. So I would have to work with it for a while to then say that's right or not as a value. But the silver is good, it works fine. So that's the VX, and I'll come back to that. And the next device, it looks different, only it's black. That is a fully cosmotic, only cosmotic device. It's called the EX715AG. It looks a bit distorted there, it's a lot smaller. I'll come back to that as well. Just thought I'll photograph them. This is the EX735. This is both scanner and cosmotic. That's the big one, the same size as the first one, and then the little one is here.
Just for your comparison, guys, so you can see the difference.
Yeah.
This is the 735, right? EX, the latest and the greatest, that combines scanner and cosmotic in one body.
It's the V as in Victor. EX.
It's the EX.
This is EX, okay. Like Edward X. It's a replacement of the old 735, which was VX before. It was also a combination, but the old 735 combined scanner and cosmotic in the same mode.
I'll talk about that in a minute anyway.
And this one just does scanner and cosmotic separately. And for comparison, this is the 715 what Dr. Rob was telling. That's what you see on the screen. So on the screen you can't really see the difference in size, but that's what it is. So, and that's pure cosmotic.
Oh, you have the gold electrodes?
Yes. And thank you.
So I'll come back to them now by looking at the screens. The light is not very good, but that is the EX735, the latest device. This was the one before, the VX735, and this is the small one, the 715. So it is not really important to talk about the VX, I take it. It is one of my favorite devices, because you can move over the skin, and there is that measurement there, the initial reading that keeps moving, and you can follow the areas as you move. And it works very quick. And that's really nice when you have a busy practice, and the results are good. But it is nothing like the new 735, because that has the full cosmotic aspect to it. And if you're this one is only cosmotic, and the cosmotic is definitely a great step up from the old scanner. If you're a practitioner, you need that one because it will last much longer and you can work it much harder, and this one is great for home use. But even for home use, that one has both scanner and cosmotic. Now, what I say here, it's for people who are familiar with the old technology, is that these are all automated. You do not have to set any of the settings yourself. Yeah? With the VX, you set the strength of the signal, E there, 10%, that is the lowest, and you can up that till the person says, yes, I feel that, and then you can step down from it or leave it there. But the other ones, the E, the energy value, there as well, is set automatically. And you can still influence that by, there you see an A2, and here you see an A1, and there you see a hand. The A1 is for children, so it sets itself on a lower energy, but still automatically, and the person is likely not to feel it. And for children that is great. Or very sensitive people, and A2, like there, is for normal adults, and there is an A3 as well, because some people hardly feel it, particularly when people get older. There are certain areas that are very much less sensitive, and sometimes you need to work that more.
So say that about A3 again.
A1 and A3, and A3 is more for elderly people, or if you work on areas that are not very sensitive.
So I guess I'm having I'm blocked with understanding that. So the A3 gives even a harder signal?
It gives even a stronger signal, higher energy value.
Wow. I've been giving this information. Thank you, Rob. No, it's
okay.
It's, I mean, I know you're on it.
Yeah, that's what it does. You see, there is the idea that when you work with scanner, that it is good for the person to just feel the signal. It's partly because then the mind goes to the point. The mind is on it as well. The mind is with the treatment rather than drifting off into what was I doing yesterday, and does that bird look nice that's flying by outside. So it's good to have the mind on it, but it still works if the energy value is just under. If you don't feel it, then that is not to worry about. And I do regularly experience when I put it on A2, because this one you can put on A2, that people say, oh, I don't really feel it. That's fine, it's still working. And there's always that moment that it will pick up and suddenly, oops, it gives a stronger signal. This one, the new AEX and the old EX, they are alternated. So they go through a kind of phrasing, I call that. For those who are not familiar with it, the scanner signal itself has a wide variety of aspects. You can analyze it on the waveform, the clusters together, the way they're spread out, frequency, modulation, the strength of the signal, or the first peak of it, etc. I don't want to go into the details, but there are lots of variables. And before we had to set that by hand. And there are certain rules to say, for an acute condition, a chronic condition, you do it this way or that way. But now you don't have to think about that, because Alexander Karasev has worked out exactly how it works best. And I've noticed that it goes through phrasing. This one shows that very much, because those bars, they will go and it goes at the end, and then it goes back, and it goes through another phrase, another setting. So it keeps talking to the body, it keeps picking up how the body is responding. And if it finds that the response is not coming through anymore, it changes its ways. And from the way the body is responding, it will do that, because for every person it is different how it changes its ways. It's quite remarkable. Yeah. And then suddenly, like with David yesterday, when I was working on the neck, the last one on the right side, it suddenly went to very high, very high, very high, very high for a while, and then it cut off, and then it started to do something else. It's quite remarkable. In a way, because it is so automated, there's nothing else to do than just keep it on once you've identified the right spot. You then can't avoid looking at what's going on there. And when the patient or client can see it too, they sit there staring too, and you just sit staring at the screen where this little wheel goes around, and then it goes slow, and then it goes fast, and you can't keep your eyes off it. But it's like having a dog. You've never had a dog before, the dog is there, and suddenly the dog starts, nothing is happening. You think, oh, what's going on? And you learn to know the dog, and then you know, when he does that, then such and so is approaching, or he puts his ears up. You get to understand the behavior, and you really get a feeling for it, what it is doing, whether you're doing good work, or whether not much is happening. And perhaps better go to another place. And the nice thing about these two is as well, that you can identify the spot where to work. And with the 1.5, the 7.15, you get these bars, and you put it on the skin. What I have to say first, these two devices cannot make sense much if you move. And even though this one has a scanner setting as well, it doesn't work as well when you move. It's not like the DAF, for example. So you best measure by putting it on the skin, putting it on the skin, putting it on the skin, and it takes a second, you bleep, and then you get a value, and the value is expressed there and there. And the little one will just give the bars, but the bigger one will also give a figure, which in this case was 0, and as it came out on the photograph. But it gives a number. So if that comes very close, you can compare those, and then you, depending on the measurements there, you can then decide where you go. We'll talk about that a bit later. At least I'm going to tell you how I work with it, because there are no official instructions. And I'll tell you why. So it goes through phrase, and that phrasing is interactive. It depends on the person you're working with how it is going to do that. It is not a automatically set thing that goes through. That's the screen of the VX. Oh, that's the VX. We don't need to talk about that. Only then need to say that the dosing is very fast. And Dr. Irina noticed that as well. And sometimes it is far too fast. You put it on. Choop, dose. Nothing anymore. And that's not particularly nice. It is not as sensitive as the EX. You often get as if it's not making contact, where the EX does. Particularly cosmotic setting is far more sensitive. Where with the normal scanner you get no readings or nobody as a signal or nothing is going on. You put the EX on in cosmotic node and absolutely it picks things up very well. You probably know that the cosmotic technology also receives radio waves from the body.
Receives what?
Radio waves. It has a radio receiver in it.
Really?
It does. And it modulates itself also according to what it receives. It's an interesting development. The CIA now, in America, has a little device and it can point it at a wall and they can see from radio waves whether there's somebody behind it. And they can also see the heartbeat, because that's what they want to know, because if the heartbeat is up, the person is up to no good.
Well, we saw that on Mission Impossible 3. Yeah.
And it's being tested in Iraq at that moment.
So the body emits
Sorry?
the body emits radio frequencies.
Yes. The body emits light. Light is also radio frequency. It's in the whole range of electromagnetic radiation.
Is the receiver and a transmitter?
No. No.
Receiver and
Just a receiver, and from that it analyzes how it is doing in its communication. And then it gives the signal back. But not a radio signal, not as far as I know. But Karasev is very good at not saying more than necessary, and sometimes putting it this way and then putting it that way, and you're not quite sure which way exactly it is. And it is partly because he had problems in the past with people, and yeah.
This is only the cosmonic.
Yeah. And it is also partly because Karasev has a dream. I'm explaining. It's also because Karasev has a dream. Truly a dream, and the dream is that everybody has a device and they can treat, and the world can be a healthier place for it. It started off, literally, when he was part of a team in Russia to develop a device like this for cosmonauts, and they weren't getting very far. He woke up one morning and he knew how to do it. He just woke up and he knew it. Suddenly he saw it, and he saw 3 levels: scanner, cosmotic, and the next level. And the next level is in the making. And so it's taken all this time. This was back in the 70s. I had the fortune of being over there and hearing him talk. Somebody translated. And that was a good experience. He's certainly a good man.
Rob, tell a little bit about the character of Karasev, because it's so different than some of our other device manufacturers.
He smiled greatly when we arrived and was pleased to see us, and then in the morning he'll come in. His little boy is exactly like him. He walks into the treatment room, into the breakfast area, and he doesn't sort of say, "Oh, hello." He walks in and he's a bit like this. And then he'll sit down here and he's still eating, and then you say, "Good morning." "Oh, good morning." Then he knows.
He's definitely an incredible engineer.
Yes.
He's not so much a people, but his humor is just lovely.
He's very generous. he would go to the beach and there would be wine and things, and he would bring that along.
And
Very much so.
No Napoleon complex.
No.
Because he's a slight man.
I have photographs from the visit here on this computer, and a beautiful photograph of Alexander Karasev. And he asked me, I said, can I, give people this photograph? No, he doesn't want that. It was very interesting because there were some lovely devices being shown. One was taking brainwaves, EEGs, and you could connect 10 people at the same time and have it all on one screen. It was very easy to put it on with wireless, and Alexander demonstrated he was using the scanner on somebody who was connected, and it gave a holographic image of the brainwaves, and you could make certain waves visible and not see the other ones, and they made the alpha waves visible as red, and you could see like clouds going through the whole brain of alpha waves when he was working with the scanner. It was a fantastic sight, quite remarkable. Yeah. And you could see thereby how well it was working, what it was doing. The whole brain was involved. Yeah.
Wireless transmission, how does that not affect the scanner?
It depends on the frequencies, I suppose, and depends on the frequencies. And in Russia, they are more aware of the emission of radiomagnetic waves than here. Over there, you cannot have cattle under a power line. So this is the VX, and the dose is very fast, and that we'll talk about in a minute. And that's not. The VX is always a combination in every setting of both scanner and cosmotic. And you have the setting cosmotic, then you have the setting scanner, and the setting scanner max. And that really refers to the vision the device had. The cosmotic will pick up radio waves, and it has a wider vision, what's happening through the whole system, and takes that into account while it's treating one specific area. So thereby it treats more of the whole system. And the scanner only looks local. The scanner max looks very local, and it can be wonderful for very localized pain. The real spot of pain, it works very good on that, as my clients will tell you. Yeah. So I won't go into any details about that. This is really the Rolls Royce, but also the only one, the best device. You can't slide over the skin, it confuses it. I have a question mark here. I don't know whether Dr. Irina will fill me in. It doesn't always do the same. You see, may I have a device? May I have an EX here? Thanks. You see, the electrodes are large.
You want a 715?
No. The electrodes are large. And you place them on the skin like that, and it switches itself on. Yeah? Sometimes you need to work like that. It still can be sensitive. If somebody comes in, been racing, it's a hot day, and the back is dripping, and you wipe it off, and still there is a lot of fluid there, you can get higher values. If you then place it like that, you get lower values with the VX. So with the VX, that is a good way then to still have values you can compare. This one you can't slide. Most of the time I find when I do that or that, I almost get the same value. It has a different way of feeding back the importance of the area. That's the best way to put it. But sometimes the value differs, and I reckon that is because this is an average value, and this is specific there. So that would always also indicate you can work in different ways. If you want to work on specific points, then that comes closer to it than that.
But also when you touch the surface for the second time, you already get a different value.
Not so much with this one.
No?
Some different value, but not so much. And the difference is also, say this is a scanner device, and this needs treating, and I've treated it, and I go back to it, the value is much higher. And the value below it is higher, which is interesting. And I'll come to that in the protocols by Ravenko. This one, something stands really out. You work on it, and then you go back measuring, it's completely blended in. Immediately it blends in. It does something quite different. Yeah? And that's a good feeling as well, because therefore I've based a different protocol on that. Very simple, it's just common sense and easy, but nothing special, but it allows you to work differently. You can measure, you get something standing out, you treat that, then you just measure again and see what's happened, and then I'll tell in a minute. Thank you. I'll keep it for a moment if I may.
Just to add, according to Dr. Karasik, size does matter. And the size of the electrodes, actually the larger the electrodes, it will be more efficient.
Okay.
So there is something in it.
Okay. I would still be interested what it does when you work more local because of my interest in specific points. Yeah.
But I can ask him to give more clarification.
Yeah. I don't want to sound arrogant. Whatever he says, I don't take it that is immediately all the truth. I still allow myself to investigate that and to see whether there may be different aspects to it.
Does pressure make it much difference?
Yes. You have to have an element of pressure. It's the feeling that you go just through the skin. If it is too light on the skin, just touching, not only can the signal feel unpleasant because it's trying to make contact and then it jumps a bit, it's a bit prickly.
And if you create more pressure, the piezoelectric effect, which would somehow be influencing that by feedback?
Yes, it will, but it's better to press harder so that the signal goes well through the skin into the tissue. Yeah. And it develops a skill. You get used to measuring and then, oh dear, I have to stay here, and then keep pressure and stand with your arm like that for a while. It's good practice. So, the size of the contact surface we've just spoken about, it can assess the effectiveness of either the cosmotic or the scanner and choose between them. If you put it in treatment mode, there is a thing there coming up, A, like here, the A. If you then let it start treating, it will assess what the body responds best to at that moment, on that spot. And in this case it chooses scanner. If a C appears, it chooses cosmotic in that spot. And then you let it work accordingly. It is a fine line sometimes. Sometimes it is very obvious. You can achieve the same by starting to measure, but when you measure, you have to choose whether you measure in scanner or in cosmotic. And when you do both in the same area, then sometimes you find that the values come very close between one or the other. So you measure scanner, boom, 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 and then you measure cosmotic, same position, boom, 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 and then you say, that looks alike, or the highest value of each is very close, and one is just a bit higher than the other. The device would then choose to work in one or the other. But because it is so close, you work for a short moment there, you take it off and just put it back, it then works in the other mode. That's not because it can't make up its mind, it's just that the values are very close. So at that case, it doesn't matter all that much. Yeah?
As a practitioner, how do you document it? Or just
I write it down. I document.
Max or min values?
Sorry?
Do you put in max or min values in terms of what the features are, or do you just...
No, I don't. I note down where it wants to work.
Okay.
And I do that in terms of T7, etc., or which area. And then I note which mode it wants to work in. Yeah? Yeah. So when you measure, you have to choose whether you want to measure either one or the other. And you can go through an area in both and measure them and then see what comes up. And then you'll see that sometimes the value is close. And I sometimes, in my arrogance, override and say, no, I want to work cosmotic. Or I want to work in scanner. For reasons I know best myself. When you open the device and you press certain buttons, it says, it talks about 1,000 hours working time. It gives you the date when it was sold, and it gives you how many hours you have worked. Now that would just suggest, Dr. Irina, that there is a guarantee for 1,000 hours. Is that what is true? You can the EX, when you open it and you press both the on-off button and the menu button, you get a screen and it goes through the version and the date, etc., and it says how many hours are left, how many hours you've used it.
Oh yeah.
Does that suggest that you have 1,000 hours?
Or a year warranty, whichever comes first.
Okay. But 1,000 hours is...
It can be hours of work.
Yeah, because 1,000 hours is more than a year.
Right.
Yeah. Even when you have a busy practice, because it registers the time you're actually working, not the time it is on.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
also I have to underline the importance of not opening the device. We had a situation that it's just
Sure.
very important that you don't break the seal, because
Oh, right.
EX is sealed in a very particular way. As soon as you open the device, not just the device to change the battery, but if you try to look what's inside, you break the seal, which is photosensitive. So as soon as the light gets in, the seal gets broken. And in order to reactivate this seal, you will pay like a really handsome fees. It's about $1,500, I believe,
Right.
to
Okay.
just reseal the machine, even though it can be done online, basically.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
just to be
Yeah.
careful not to open it.
You don't need to open it when you...
No.
No, you never need to open
We had
that.
an electronic engineer who decided that he wanted to see what was inside, and we didn't know this, but it had the seal on it. So when he called us up and said, well, the seal broke just magically. And I had to ask us, you're an electronic engineer, did you look? Well, yeah, well, okay. And, you pay the consequences is what we found out. Literally, you have to pay the consequences of that. A layperson's not going to do it, but if someone wants to, I mean, this is state of the art of state of the art of state of the art. No propagate the battery. It's not going to affect us. Only if someone wants to open up to
Yeah.
look into it, try and reverse engineer it, or any of those other things.
It is in a way obvious. It's light sensitive because it receives radio waves, and light is radio waves. In the original instructions, it was told wrong. You had to press the on-off button and the mode. So I did that, and it then suddenly showed a totally different screen going through a rigmarole of actions, and I think it was resetting itself. And I know from when I saw Kara 7, he had the 715 for me. He looked at me, he then put it on and pressed boom, 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 and he changed the settings. So there was a lot to it. There are all kinds of buttons one can press if you want to experiment, but you may change the settings, and I would advise you not to do that. Those switches on and off, and don't use that button in combination with all at once. Would be my advice. So, the battery delivery. Now that's an interesting one. When I say the battery delivery is less of an issue than the 715, I had with the 715, I would put it on and it started to work and said bleep, threw everything away, started the beginning again. Bleep, back to the beginning, back to the beginning, back to the beginning. So I asked, what is that? And what it is, that at that moment it needs delivery from the battery more power than the battery can give. It needs that for a moment. And then when it can't get it, it goes back to the beginning. So in that way you can't work on that spot. And then you go to the nearest spot where it then keeps working. Sometimes when you keep it on, it'll overcome it and it'll start working. Now I think that Karasef has made changes because it can still be an issue. It was once, but the other times when it did that, I just kept it there, and after a few times it then found a different mode that it could work with, and it went on working. So in a way it reset itself to the circumstances. So, and then the phrasing is less obvious as this one, but you can observe it quite clearly that this little wheel goes circling around, and then suddenly it goes at a high speed, and you know that there's a lot of interaction, and then it starts to slow down, and it goes bloop, 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 and then you know something going to come, it goes bloop, bloop, and then at that moment the dose value will go up, and sometimes it says whoops, the dose is done, and sometimes it goes a little step, and then it goes into a different phrase. So you get a different kind of signals coming up here, because it gives signals, and it can go zoop high low, zoop high low, zoop high low, and it's just something to observe. Don't ask me what it means. It has to do with the energetic value, the amount of interaction, the way the body is responding. I'm sure there is such a number of variables that you could make visible in that whole process And he has chosen the ones that are most indicative for us to know that there is meaningful conversation going on. That's the aim after all. And it takes sometimes a fair time to dose. I visited the 715. I once had the person had Lyme disease and was in a really bad state, and had found one spot on the back and it worked for 45 minutes. Unfortunately, the person was lying because she was very tired, so I was standing. Be prepared sometimes that it can take a while, and get yourself in a comfortable position so you're standing, and because it is important to keep that amount of pressure on, the very steady, this constant pressure, and keep it in position. Don't start moving it, because it will confuse it. And if you happen to move it a bit, don't panic. So be it, just keep it. Yeah. And the after dosing value normalizes, goes down. That's what I was talking about, that you don't find once you've done the work that then the whole place is still very active. It has normalized. You measure again and you get the normal value of before you got a very high value. And that's reassuring to know something is happening. That's the EX. It is a more delicate device. The battery delivery can be a bit more of an issue, but you can reposition it. It's not a problem as such. And then you may find after reposition you go back that things work fine. It is a home use device, limited lifespan as such. All devices, whatever, your car has a limited lifespan. This one is a bit more limited. But it is a lovely device. It's much like the X735 in the cosmetic setting. It has more beauty treatment settings. The EX has one setting for beauty treatment, and that is a particular way of signaling that stays more in the skin, and to help the skin to, and the muscles underneath to give you a better appearance. I don't use it that way. Can see. And the phrasing is again not as obvious as the 735, but that's just it's not important. So now,
So what is the normal life of a machine like that?
the life. Well, a year or 1,000 hours, it's guaranteed.
Okay, and after that?
After that, then when it goes wrong, you can send it back and it will be repaired. And depending, if he feels you are a good person, he worked hard, then here's another device.
My first
It depends your feeling.
Cosmotic is 3 years old and it's working great.
Well, there you are. As I say,
A lot. Working great.
as I said, Alexander Karasev has a mission. And I remember that just after I left, an American businessman arrived. He knew he was coming. The businessman had a lot of money on him. He wanted to buy a certain amount of devices, get the training, and go back to America. He never saw Karasev. The smell of it. He has a sense. He has a sense. And I don't know whether he's always right, but he has a sense about people. And he didn't want to see him. He never saw him. Money? Nah. Yeah? The cosmotic approach of complaints. Always be positive. And being positive means that you're being reckless, or this is going to work, but they have a vision of what you want to achieve. You have a person there with you who has asked for treatment, who is in trouble one way or the other, and for that person it is their life. And that's really important. So you want to work with that with the best you can. Holding a device and putting it on somebody's skin, you are there as well. Your whole understanding of it, in a way, comes through. And there's nothing to be scared of. It's just, be real, be honest. And have respect. As we said yesterday. Acute and chronic complaints are different. With an acute complaint, somebody bangs into something, that hurts, and you have that thing in your hand, you treat the locality immediately, the sooner the better. And you speed up the healing enormously. Broken bone, half the healing time, no joke. You support with general zones, especially the 3 pathways, and I'll mention what that is later, and others as appropriate. I would do that every so often, and I'll show you. And you can work daily till you get a significant improvement, and then you can spread it out more. And I don't know whether Doctors David and Irina agree about this. We are talking protocols, and if you have a chance to follow a bit and comment, because I'm just telling what I do. So you work daily till significant improvement is observed on the acute line. When it's chronic, I personally start always with the 3 pathways. It gives me an impression, even if it's only measuring, it gives me an impression whether there are significant areas and where they are. And as we spoke yesterday about what they may relate to, what functional aspects in the system relating to which organs, that gives me good feedback. And I compare that with the way the person is and how they are behaving. 5 elements. Yeah? Like in the 5 element system. When you work, you use symmetrical, reciprocal nodal zones as appropriate. I'll explain that as well. You treat twice and then once per week. I often treat just once per week and get really good results. And you plan for breaks in the course of treatment at the right time. And you observe the law of cure. Everybody knows the law of cure. We spoke about it yesterday. You know the law of cure? Great. You're a practitioner.
That would be
Nutrition.
probably good just to summarize the law of cure.
The law of cure. Natural healing goes along certain processes, as observed by the Chinese always, but also the doctor from Germany who moved to America, Herring, put out the laws, and it states that healing can take place in reverse chronological order, meaning that as you are treating a person, you and they may observe symptoms that have been there in the past. If the person says, but I feel okay in myself, then you're absolutely sure that is right. But sometimes it can be a bit of a crisis. And if that matches something that has happened in the past, you know you're reversing in chronological order the process of disease, and what you are treating at the moment certainly relates to what was happening in the past. It is like a result of that. And you also know that you're treating the person truly, overall, all the way through, as a whole. And the other one is that it goes from inside out. That means that the feeling is, I feel better myself, but my elbow still hurts, or I still have those headaches. But you know you're on the right track. You can continue with that, absolutely. If somebody says, I feel worse within myself, you have to look very carefully. And the other one is from above to below, and I have seen that as a pain in the shoulder going to the elbow, going to the wrist, fingers, and disappearing that way. Or psoriasis sometimes. When it comes back massively, it then starts to clear most of the time from the head and then goes down. That's the law of cure, and it's good to observe that. So when things happen, it's good to prepare the person for that. I always say to my clients, immediately after the treatment, when things play up tonight, don't call me names. My ears are out. Don't you dare. So any change is a good change. Any reaction means the body is responding. And then from there we can work further with that. You plan for breaks, perhaps I can say that now, is that you get changes when you're working with a person. And then there is a time you may not get so many changes, or you find that the values you're getting are not particularly high, they're all on a par, not much is happening. That may be a good time to plan for a break. And the best break is to call it an open break, and they call you when symptoms start to come to the surface again, or something new develops. Whatever happens, if they say, hey, I haven't had this before, they call you. Or the symptoms reoccur a little bit, you then have a second series. You're treating with a chronic problem, and you're encouraging the body itself to heal itself, and that is a process. And you best not force it, and particularly Cosmotic is not very forcing. It truly talks with the system and supports it. So forcing is never a good idea in nature. If you want an apple tree to give apples in winter in the northern hemisphere, then you build a greenhouse, and then a hailstorm comes and breaks the glass, and everything is gone. I mean, natural is best. So it says at the top, in imitation of classical Russian protocols. The old scanner, where you had to do all the settings yourself and measure, you had to measure and then you dosed, and there were certain protocols developed by a man called Alexander as well, Ravenko. He's a neurologist, and he obviously knew about Chinese medicine, because I can see why he has certain protocols, and I think they're very good. And now having a new device, even though Karasev says it doesn't matter where you work as much, that may be true, I think it's still a good idea to stick to certain protocols. He obviously has built in something that tells you where to work best. So if that's the case, there must be a better place and a not so good place. And I think also when you measure, you already contact the body and you make it aware. Something is going on. It gives signals. Hey, come again. Yeah, there is an intelligence in the system. So you already start to wake it up and do something. So I think therefore it is good to follow certain orders of working. So choosing an area or zone in general according to complaints. It has always been a protocol. Somebody comes in, what's your problem? Got a pain in my knee. Now I'm inclined to then talk further. Okay, how long have you had that? Blah blah blah. You talk that through. And how are you otherwise? Have you had any problems in the past? Have you had your childhood injections? So they start thinking back of the childhood. Oh, I don't know, my mother, blah, blah, blah. Okay, before you were 10 years old, did you have any stomach problems, any breathing problems, any allergies, any fevers, and I talk through, and I also see how they respond. No, I didn't have this, yes I did have that, yes I did have that. According to yesterday, you then start to get a sense of the character of the person and how they structure their life, or they say, oh yes, and I had this and I had that. To bring you all their life, they want the sympathy in terms of 5 elements, and then you work further with that. So it is not a bad thing to do that. But sometimes it's okay. I see somebody, I have little time, I just give them a consultation, just so I can meet them, no charge. They can see me, this is what I do, that's how we're going to work if you want to come. Yes, I think I can help. And then they say, and here's the pain. I say, oh, let's just do a test session. Just put the thing on, give them a very short session, and when they come back to that really worked. And then they come very positive for the follow-up treatments.